meditation. Um, so Zeal, Grace sent me a note this past week and said, can you do a talk? And it's on Zeal. And I said yes. And Zeal was really hard for me. I think it's been the hardest part of studying. When I look around at all the squares in front of me with all your faces, I know it took a certain amount of zeal just to sign up for this course and start doing it. For me, it did anyway, because I don't know, if it wasn't COVID time, I probably wouldn't have done this, but I thought, okay, I'm going to give it a try. And here I am. So, and I wrote about this in my paper. I struggle with the word zeal because zeal, to me, when I looked up all the definitions of it, a lot of it meant either a furor or single-mindedness, or it had something to do with force or power. And obviously we get the word zealot from that. And, you know, when I think of a zealot, it's like someone who just pushes through to the end, no matter what, doesn't, you know, doesn't let go. And to me, someone who does that, and maybe like strives for perfection or wants everything to be right, really misses out on life, because I think the Buddha wants us to smile and be happy and to be relaxed. So I went to the English version of the scriptures, and they use the word courage. And so zeal comes from that zele, a Greek word for furor or emulation. But courage comes from the French or Latin, and cor means heart. So when you have courage, you have bravery or strength in the face of pain or grief or whatever's going on in front of you. And so the word courage made a whole lot more sense to me. But then I thought, okay, so one of the 4 articles of progress is zeal. So what is that about? And why am I struggling with it so much? And so one of the things I did is I thought about the times in my life that I did feel like I had some zeal, or I had to push really hard. One of those times, and it happened many times, was standing up for the rights of my children. Our children are adopted and they're from 2 different cultures. And there were times when either an adult or a child would say something unnecessarily mean or harmful, or just they didn't really even understand what they were saying. And I became Mama Bear and became very zealous in speaking to them about it, writing notes, talking to police officers, talking to whoever I needed to speak to about what was happening. And that felt right at the time. It felt like something I needed to do. I didn't even feel like I needed courage. It came from me. It just came from me. And then as in my work life, I was a reading and literacy teacher. So I worked with children who often struggled in that arena. And I had to advocate for them. I had to speak up for them. I had to, many people just kind of gave up on them. Oh, they're not reading, they're not writing, they can't do this, they can't do that. So I was the one who had to step up and say, but wait a minute, like maybe we're missing something. You know, people learn in different ways. And I was pretty zealous about that. I didn't give up on kids very easily. And I found I was successful. There were many times where kids were taught certain very rigorous ways, maybe by teachers who were zealots about what they were teaching and thought they should learn in a certain way. And I disagreed and would work with them in a different way. And I believe it worked. I know it worked because I know they began to read and things changed for them in their lives. So I do believe that being flexible, being balanced, really helps us with this. But I still was struggling, and I found a piece in a book by Thich Nhat Hanh that really helped me understand this a little bit better. and it's called Fierce and Gentle Bodhisattva. When you enter the gate of a Buddhist temple, you will probably see the statue of a very gentle figure with a welcoming smile on your left. But on your right, you will see a figure with a very fierce face, brandishing a weapon. His whole face is burning with fury, and smoke and flames are pouring out of his eyes and mouth. Both of these figures are bodhisattvas, beings who have dedicated their whole life to putting an end to other people's suffering. The fierce figure is the one who has the capacity to keep the hungry ghosts in check. Every time we organize a ceremony to offer food and drink to the hungry ghosts, the lost and wandering souls, we need to evoke the bodhisattva with the burning face to come and help. The hungry ghosts only listen to him because he has the fierce look that says, "You better behave or you'll get it." So when you see someone with a fierce face, you can't necessarily say that person is evil. They might be a real bodhisattva. You can be very firm, but at the same time, you can be very compassionate. So if you're a gentle bodhisattva, you have to have real compassion and understanding within you. If you are the fierce, red-faced bodhisattva and demonstrate firmness and strength, you must also have a tender heart and deep understanding. So this kind of told me that the whole idea of having zeal means that maybe there are times in your life that you need to be that fierce bodhisattva, and then there are other times that you need to just be that courageous person. Maybe it's a silent person, and maybe that silence is really what you learn from the most. So I looked at the additional discourses, and there was one passage in particular that helped me with this. And that was from chapter 8, number 8. And it said, a person who truly understands their practice does not think they are met with hardships when favorable or unfavorable situations occur, but thinks that the right time has come for him or her to implement his or her practice. He or she is never swayed or influenced by these situations, but utilizes them to his or her advantage with ease. So my goal in learning more about Zeal, and I'm kind of glad I'm first because I feel like I can say what I'm saying, but then I can really learn from the other 3 people who are speaking about Zeal. So I'm going to thank you in advance. From the founding master in chapter 8, he said, to die with one's mind free of attachment is the greatest task a human being is to carry out in one's life. So to me, those are the phrases that help me understand what Zeal is about, when to use it, what it is in our practice, and to smile and be balanced. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Christine. Thank you so much. And next we have Patty. Oh. Everyone's like, Patty, we can't hear you. Okay. Okay, then as Patty, we'll give you a little bit of time. Don't worry, take your time. And in the meantime, let's get Bob. Bob is.
Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Okay, good. I'm on my iPhone here. I don't have a laptop, and my wife and I are on our last day of our quarantine here in New York before our son's wedding. So I'm on an iPhone. And I'm hearing an echo of my own voice. Are you hearing that? You are hearing the echo? Grace,
Try it
can you
again.
say something? Or Patty? I'm sorry, Grace, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Yes, I can.
Okay. You want me to
Perfect.
go ahead? All
Go
right.
ahead. Thank you.
Okay, on my iPhone. Well, being an academic, naturally, I looked it up in the dictionary, and it says zeal means a great energy or enthusiasm in pursuit of a cause or an objective. But then it went on to say, in religious terms, it means a devotion to God or another religious cause, as in being a missionary. The synonyms it listed, among several, were passion, love, devotion, gusto, ardency, and rare fervency. I don't think Soda-san talked about rare fervency. But interestingly, there were positive and negative connotations to zeal, as in zealous or overzealous. I found a lengthy article by a psychologist, so lengthy, I'll admit I didn't read the whole thing, but she went into saying that zeal or passion can be a love passion, or can it be an anger-like emotion? The latter is a current affective state of mind that is intentionally directed towards a person or a group of persons, usually condemning a violation of a religious norm and motivating vengeance and retaliation, as in a religious zealot. Now, actually, on the other hand, Reverend Yu reminded us of Soda-san's guidance that the four articles of progress towards our faith, zeal, the questioning mind, and dedication. He said we all face obstacles in trying to follow the Dharma, and we need zeal or passion to overcome them. He had told this wonderful and interesting story about the fellow who was uh, failing at everything in life, work, marriage, and so on. And he got so depressed, he was about to give up on it all when he saw these fleas trying to get into his bed and was so impressed with them crawling across the ceiling and dropping into his bed, so impressed with their zeal and passion that he got himself together and turned his life around. He also, Dr. You said that chickens don't get fleas because of their high body temperature. I'm not quite sure what he meant by that. Chickens have a lot of zeal or passion. I will admit that being an animal scientist, I had to look that up. I'd never heard that before. And sure enough, Dr. Yu, as always, was correct. You might be interested in knowing that the average body temperature of a domestic chicken is between 105 and 107 degrees. Now, people can have a zeal or passion, I believe, for all kinds of things. You can have a passion for a lover, or for gardening, or cooking, golf, old movies, whatever. But most of these things don't necessarily present obstacles in our lives. I found years ago that if you want a PhD, you better have a passion for science. If you want a successful marriage, you better have a passion and love for your spouse. We already have a list of obstacles facing our daily lives in our pursuit of Buddhism. Developing and keeping a meaningful practice is hard. I found it really hard, and we need zeal to follow our path. Nonetheless, like in sexual passion, or I suppose even in golf, or watching old movies, we have to be cautious and not to overdo it, become a zealot instead of just having zeal or passion. In the scriptures, and also in the additional discourses, Master Soda-san warns us not to become an ascetic and not to be so attached to the Buddha Dharma that you waste your life. So, to me, the advice is be zealous, but beware. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bob. Wonderful. Okay, great. And Patty, we'll go to Patty now.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, perfect.
Good. We fixed that problem. I really hate talking in front of people, so I'm just going to read what I wrote. Zeal, great energy or enthusiasm in pursuit of a cause or objective. I live in zeal. No, that's not true. My energy isn't what it used to be, because it says energy or enthusiasm, and I have lots of enthusiasm. But when it comes to this class and learning the Dharma, I take to heart the practice as directed in the scriptures and my teachers. Chapter 3 of the scriptures of the founding master provides a clear path and understanding of my responsibility. When Master Sotasan writes about the practice of reciting the essential dharmas of daily practice, he says you must do this until you ultimately reach a state of mind that needs no checking. This is a subtle command, which means it's a necessary part of my practice. I have read them twice a day for a week. The first time I read them some time ago, I knew that these dharmas were already a part of my daily practice, just as an ordinary human. The first time, but some I need to make sure I do a daily check on, particularly the last few. I still hold on to some resentments, but I try to remember to be grateful. In my other practice, we were instructed to write a gratitude list. I'm not good at sticking to a daily journaling of anything. However, my attitude toward life has improved due to that gratitude. I recognize when I am acting out of resentment or when I am not being grateful. Let us turn a reluctance to teach into a readiness to teach well. There are two concepts in my mind on this. One is to be a teacher, like Reverend Yu or Reverend Sung, a math teacher, a history teacher, or a teacher of literature. The other is that everyone is a teacher, whether they know it or not. As a teenager, I believed everyone I crossed paths with, even for a moment, left me with something. I have spent several years trying to help other women realize their worth. It's so much easier to do for others than ourselves. We have a saying in the rooms, if you want what we have, you will do what we did. There is a path that is suggested. In this, I try to help these women find their way to that path. Lastly, let us turn a lack of public spirit into an eagerness for the public's welfare. This can go in many directions. I have made choices that have helped the general public, at least in my world. I cannot seem to find where I can best put my energy as a public spirited. I refuse to take the position of a mayor. I will not join any of the armed services. I'm also not very eager, as I think that requires a forethought of action. I can look at this as I do the best I can with the general public as a practitioner by being thoughtful, kind, empathetic, and helpful to those around me as each moment presents itself. As I read through these instructions for practice, I cannot retain each piece I read and become wholly a sage. But as a practitioner, I am mindful of the essential dharmas of daily practice. This is why it is suggested we read them once in the morning and once in the evening, not to be able to recite the words, but to acknowledge this practice throughout my daily living. After a while, my mind will need less checking. I find inquiry into human affairs and universal principles is what I put most of my time into. For me, this brings awareness and understanding of how things work in chaotic ways and knowing how the universal principles work in accordance with the natural law, the ill-one nature of all things connected and yet individual. I particularly like the scriptures, chapter 3, paragraph 22. Here, Master Sotasan makes it clear to me that all this reading and knowing scripture by rote is not the true way to the path. What free time would you have to acquire real competence in cultivation, inquiry, and choice, and to achieve character that transcends that of common sentient beings? This makes me more grateful for who I am as a person. I cannot believe truly within myself that I must know the scriptures word for word. I take my experiences in daily living, then check the scriptures and other readings against what caused the sensory condition to arise. Also, I talk with others to share my experience and get other perspectives. In paragraph 23, Master Sotasan says, if people look at this world in the right spirit, there will be nothing in it that is not scripture. When you speak, you will be reciting scripture. When you act, you will be applying scripture. Anytime and anywhere, the scripture will unfold without end. And this is how I've lived my life. Not always in the best of light, however. Looking back, I can see better the choices I have made and how they have led me to this moment. This is the Dharma in action. Human affairs and universal principles do not derive from the written world. Rather, the whole world is in fact human affairs and universal principles. Let me read that again. The whole world is in fact human affairs and universal principles. Life is to be experienced. This was my motto as a young woman. Yes, it got me into some predicaments, and yet here I am, a more rounded individual than I was 20 years ago. Through my experience, I can see the scriptures. Knowing this, it is with zeal that I read the scriptures. I follow this practice in Won Buddhism. I try to the best of my ability to perform actions in the best interest of moving forward on my path into liberation. I believe this to be so. Zeal is a funny word. However, I suppose it adequately describes what is needed to follow any path that I believe in, or I wouldn't be here right now. Without zeal, life would be quite mundane. Zeal makes the rock climber climb Kilimanjaro. Zeal is what makes the skier take chances and do hang 10 movements, which I would never do. Zeal is what heroes are made of. Zeal is what Master Sotasan had, as well as many great Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. If I want what they have, I will do what they did. I am so grateful for the ancestors opening a path for us to follow. Anyone who has wholehearted belief, zeal, questioning, and dedication can be certain of speedy success. Without them providing the way, we might still be squandering our lives away. After being so dedicated to this class and reading as much as I have a greater zeal for this practice. Thank you.
Thank you for that sharing, Patty. Wonderful. And last but not least, Matthew.
Hi all, can you hear me all right? Excellent. I'm going to try something and see if it works.
I hear you.
Oh, neat. I wanted to see how, if I turned the PowerPoint on, what it would do to your heads. It puts them over to my side. Okay, so I'm going to be hitting a few similar points, right? We're all looking at zeal. And so one of the things that I looked at was just how important are the 8 articles in general. And I found this, this is one of my favorite, or I don't know to say favorite, but it's certainly a passage that I keep coming back to within the scriptures of the founding master. This is chapter 15, entrusting number 16. So it's almost the end of the book. If I remember right, it's 18 or something like that. In fact, I'll look very quickly. Something like 18 is the end, 19. So we're very close. And the founding master says, in my teachings in Dharma, the threefold study, the 8 articles, and the fourfold grace, which are the fundamental principles of this doctrine, that has the L1 as its cardinal tenet, cannot be altered regardless of the era or country. The remaining items or systems may be revised to fit particular area or country. And so one thing that I thought was interesting on that is in terms of explicit instruction on how to follow the articles, there's not really so much within the doctrine about it. These are, I've listed up some of the common introductory books for Won Buddhism. So here those are. They were written in 1994, 2012, and 2019 respectively. And of the 3, only one of them actually even mentions the 8 articles. Kind of like everyone else, I went in to see, well, what is the definite, how are we defining the word zeal? And I went and looked at the original Korean translation and then how it was translated over. And you can see in the first the first translation of the scriptures in 1971, the word was indeed courage. And it was the same in 1988. Both of these are the Attawan translations. For the introduction to Won Buddhism, the word audacity was used. And this was interesting. I included it in the list, even though it's not scripture, because it was written by the same minister who did the 2003 translation that switched to zeal. the current scriptures of Won Buddhism, which is the book that we're most commonly familiar with, and then the doctrinal text, which is the larger one, both continue with the word zeal. Another thing I did, because I find it interesting sometimes to see how people outside of the faith will look at what we are doing, is I looked at this book by Chae-Jun Shik. He's a university professor at Ewha University in Korea, or at least he was at the time that this was published in 2011. This book that I have on the right hand, the bottom right hand side, Won Buddhism, the Birth of Korean Buddhism. And he uses the term, zeal is the anger of why have I not become enlightened in one's efforts. And I thought this was really interesting because Won Buddhists generally would not use that type of, would not use the term anger because of the precepts. One of the precepts is this for to not harbor hatred, and often that's translated as greed or as anger, whereas like the three poisons being greed, anger, and delusion traditionally in Buddhism. So we avoid such wording, but I think it's valuable still to take a look to see, I guess you'd say, an unrestricted way of thinking about it. And that's how I kind of take Dr. Chae's look here. And I thought this was really helpful for me to think of that sort of frustration with oneself when you know you could have done better. Another note from within the scriptures is, do not make insincere vows to the Dharma realm of empty space. The lie that you have told to the Dharma realm of empty space will become the source of frightening transgressions and suffering. This was something I was thinking about with regard to the vow and kind of lazily taking it. And that is to say, not zealously doing what we've resolved to do. I suppose we make this vow to the Dharma of empty space. And this quotation reminds me a lot of my grandmother's chastising. You know, if you say you're going to do something, if you resolve to do something, resolve to do it right. Don't have to things. And then I came to the question of why would we feel zealous about Won Buddhism? And in one of those introductory books, the most recent, the 2019 one, they come up with a list of the pride we take in Won Buddhist practice. So the doctrine gives us a model for practice. So it gives us a path that we can follow. And not only that, a model that can be applicable in daily life. We have training in both substance and function. That is to say, like faith and practice. We have what to do and why we're doing it. We have development of the threefold study, but in a way that we're able to do so simultaneously. We don't have to focus on one. We can be working on all three dependent on our activity. There are things for us to do both when we're acting and when we're resting. This is all made to be applicable to daily life. We have precise diagnoses of practice, both at the end with Dharma rank, but also a lot of the scriptures give us different ways that either the founding master or Cardinal Master Jongsan analyzed other individuals in their practice. And I find a lot of times the advice and the points that the masters were making to those people also apply to me. When he finds an error, I find, oh, I do that error as well. We can apply the doctrine gives us a way to practice regardless of where we are and when we are, and it guides us towards our liberation. So these are 8 pretty good reasons in my mind's eye to be relatively zealous about our faith. And then the last one that I have is a quote from the founding master. And this is one of those metal, I think that's copper, these copper, for lack of a better word, mural. I know that's incorrect, but it's these bent metal, like stamp dies that are at the stupa above where the founding master is buried in Ixon. And this is the one for when he was practicing without any guidance, just going up to the hill and praying to the mountain gods or the mountain grandfather for many years. And Sote-san said to us, if you continue to progress in your practice just as you did when you first aroused the aspiration to follow me, no one will fail. And at least when I first came across the Dharma and I read it for the first time, I was so excited to have this resource for my development. And the zeal that I had then, I hope to continue with indefinitely. Thank you kindly.
Thank you so much, Matthew. Great slides and information. So, wow, everyone had given such fruitful presentations. There's probably maybe some questions or no, did I just freeze up? Okay. So sorry, my connection's fairly weak too. But yeah, so after the presentations, we open it up to all of you if you have any reflections or questions for our presenters. Yes, Brenda.
Can you hear me? Okay, good. Thank you all to the presenters, and to Kathy. You have such a beautiful voice that's just very calming. So after hearing these presentations, I am kind of coming away with a different thought of what zeal is to me. And I would be interested in your perspective, but the zeal is kind of like just the persistence and maybe the endurance and the persistence of just living. Like that is the zeal. Like it's, I don't know, that's kind of the word that kept coming to mind. So that's my thought that your presentations provoked. So thank you.
Thank you, Brenda. Yes, Bob.
Well, in the reading I was doing and so on, I just found it fascinating, the line between zealous and zealot. That and I've known zealots both in Christian churches that I've been in, and even in the Tibetan Buddhist temple I was studying in for a couple of years. And I'm not quite sure when you go over that line. I know Buddhists generally don't proselytize. They're not out on street corners trying to rope people in and so forth. And again, the I wouldn't say warnings, but admonitions from Master Soto-san to be careful now. Don't overdo it. Don't wreck your life by overdoing your zealousness. And also, I see previously a connecting dedication to zealousness. And anyway, I just find it an interesting thing, and wondering how do we draw the line? I mean, it's one of those things, you know it when you see it, I guess, when someone has gone from being zealous about their religion and becoming a religious zealot. I don't know if there's a real there's probably a definition of that, but I'm not quite sure.
Okay, Kathy and then Franny.
I kind of love this word. I think for me, it really connects with deep love. And I think I really like how all the presentations sort of interwove into each other. And Patty, you said zeal is what heroes are made of. That was really significant for me, because when you look at what Matt, the quote that you read, when you read what Master Soda-san says, he says, if you dedicate yourself, if you follow me with the same aspiration that you did in the beginning, then he says, no one will fail, right? No one will fail. That's really significant to me, because that word failure, the only way that we can fail is by giving up. That's the only way anyone can ever fail. There's no such thing as failure. That means we are all hit a million times. Master Soda-san was, went through over and over and over, and he just had to keep getting back up and getting back up. And I think that that's so important to me with zeal. It's no, I'm never going to give up. I'm going to keep going and keep going and keep being, like Brenda said, persistent. So that for me is why I really love this word, because I think that anyone who's ever made a difference has like that type of zeal, has that type of passion, and not in an excessive way where they lose themselves, but in a very committed way, like a devoted way. So that, anyway, thank you all for that. It was really lovely to watch it all weave and go on like a little journey. Thanks.
Franny and then Isabel.
So thank you, Kathy, for the meditation. And I love the idea of that grasping, tensing and releasing. And the talks were fantastic, and they kind of wove together, like you said. And I just wanted to add that I think how you can tell the difference between being overly zealous or practicing zeal is if you temper it with the 3 other items, articles to progress, because Master Soda-san on page 174, he put them in order, and he said you should have faith, then zeal, then questioning, and then dedication. So if you temper zeal with the others together, it kind of calms zeal down. And Revenue's talk, I thought he gave the definition of zeal being anger. And then he said, but it's like holy anger. So it's like you kind of want to get it done. I don't know exactly how to describe it, but other than just repeating what he said of it being like holy anger, like those lice that figured out a way how to get down from the ceiling instead of crawling up the bed. And so I interviewed my friend for my paper, and he's run 26 marathons in his life, pretty much consecutively. And to me, that was another example of zeal, but he also had to have dedication and faith, the belief that he can do it, coupled with the zeal and, of course, dedication to do it. So I just wanted to add that, but thank you for the talks. And I think it's awesome that anybody could just even give a talk, because it scares me also to talk in public. Thank you.
Thank you, Franny. Isabel and then Tiffany.
Yeah, thank you, Franny. That was really good. What you said about tempering the word with the other articles is very good. Thank you. And yeah, I think that I do a lot of translation, and I know how difficult it is to translate a word into another language. So I don't know what the word in Korea, of course, in Korean is, but I understand that I don't find another word in the English language that could apply to this sense of the ardor and the perseverance and the consistency and the everything that the word zeal implies in its positive form, which is really much more. If you look up, I just looked it up on Google, the definition of zeal, I didn't find any negative words. You can go down and you, of course, you will continue to find it, but its first meaning is very positive. And it's that ardor and that enthusiasm and that need to get it done. That's not you're not going to let go. You're not going to let go. And courage doesn't do it. Courage can be for a moment and then it can go away. And perseverance doesn't have the ardor. So, you know, this is the word that is the best fits this sense of this article that we need to keep in mind and practice all the time. And I think that when we have it, when we really begin to understand the teachings, it just doesn't go away. It's always going to be there. Once we get it, it just doesn't go away. So I'm happy, and I'm happy with everybody's talks. It was really beautiful, and it was humorous, and it was wonderful to see how we all really want to understand this and want to keep it up, because it's just so important. It's what takes us through. And I want to thank Patty, because Patty, that was a beautiful talk. It was really, really inspiring and personal, and I just really enjoyed it and was inspired by it. So thank you. Thank you all. And thank you, Kathy, for that beautiful meditation.
So I'll just repeat what Isabel just shared. Thank you all for your talk and for the prayer. I learned quite a lot, so I appreciate it. For
May
me,
I present the central exhibit to our case?
oh,
It
I'm
is,
so sorry. I
afraid,
don't know
a
what that
sex
is. That is on my end. Oops.
Which one?
Let me stop that right quick. Oops.
Job, it's
Oh,
Thank you, female Chekhov. Female Sulu, beam their captain
there
aboard.
we go.
But, Captain, are you sure?
There we go. So sorry about that. So I had something open on another screen and it just went, but it wasn't anything terrible. So, for me, listening to the talks today, I realized that when I hear the word zeal, I personally get very nervous about that, coming from a different religious background before Judaism, where zealousness was something that was expected, and it meant more following and adhering a particular set of rules, as one of the speakers shared today. So it's helpful to be a part of Won Buddhism where there's a little more freedom to that. But I think what Bob was sharing earlier, I thought was particularly helpful, is that Master Sote-san was sharing that it's not necessarily always about following the Dharma, but that there's also the applicability, as Matt shared, of what it means to live it out. And for me, that's the version of zeal that I have found is that it's a consciousness and a heedfulness to everyday activities. So, you know, when you walk outside, what is it that you are engaged with? And it's not necessarily people, it's also just nature. So I think for me, the zealous definition is more of an appreciation and gratitude of life, in addition to wanting to adhere to a set of practices, really a lifestyle, because it is a change from what's expected of general society. But I just really appreciated all the perspectives that were shared today, and just kind of how it wove, as Kathy said earlier, all together. But just bring in that little part too of just the excitement about being alive and knowing that your goal is to save all sentient beings. I mean, it's the purpose, and being aware and conscious of that is something that I think is unique to Won Buddhism, is a faith tradition. So. Thanks.
Thank you for that sharing, Tiffany. And I know it's Christine and then James. I know Christine had her hands.
So I feel like listening to everyone else talk about zeal really helped me I think one of the things I feel about zeal is that if you are too zealous, you're going to feel crabby, you're going to feel tired, you're going to feel burned out, you're going to get irritated. So, maybe I don't really like the word zeal, but I do think that you can be zealous about certain things. And I like the way Bob said, be zealous, but beware, because it really can lead to you being that person who just believes in one thing and then is so one pointed that they can't let go. And courage to me, I think you can be courageous all the time. I mean, I know people who are struggling with some chronic illnesses and they are courageous every second of the day and very silently courageous, and if you ask them how they're doing, they'll say, I'm good enough. I'm just good enough. So I just like the courageous thing that comes from your heart a little bit better, and that's just me. So I like the tempering, the balance that comes with that. But I appreciate all your words because I feel like I learned something from everyone who spoke today. So thank you.
Well, I wanted to say thank you also for the presentations. I also learned a lot as well. Christine, I was really really excited when you said shared your experience as a mom advocating for your own children and then your own students. I never thought about Zeal in that way, but I really appreciated that in the sense of thinking about others, and that being passionate and being zealous can also mean advocacy for other beings, not just our own personal path, but the path of others. So I really appreciated that. It's a point of reflection for me to think about as well. And I never also made a connection, Patty, with your great talk about the essential dharmas of daily practice, how that also is a point of spiritual fuel for us to continue to be zealous in our practice, and that each of the 9 essential dharmas is a very specific call to action for us in our daily lives. And so I appreciate that, Patty, for that reminder as well. And Matt, also for the history lesson. For me as someone new, I really appreciated that. That was really great. I was wondering if you can share that with us so I can also look into those texts and those resources. That would be really great. And Bob, thank you for the reminder as well. I think you definitely made a great point. I also didn't think about that as well, about sometimes can be a bit dangerous to be too overzealous. And I think that can also lead into this form of arrogance that can keep us away from being humble enough to keep learning and keep being present in our present practice. So thank you all for your presentations. It was really thought-provoking.
Thank you, everybody. And I'm going to hand it over now to Reverend Yu. Okay, I'm going to hand it over to Reverend Yu.
Okay. Can you hear me? Okay. Do you know what Quran means literally? It means dictation. Muhammad received the divine revelation from the archangel Raphael. So this is what I heard from angel or God. This is not what I thought. The Quran is just what he dictated from what he heard. Just like most of the Mahayana Buddhist scripture starts from like, thus have I heard. This is what I heard. This is what I, Ananda, heard. This is not my thinking. So according to the Quran, Muhammad asked each and every practitioners are brothers and sisters, and we practitioners should be engaged in spiritual battle, jihad. Spiritual battle or our inner battle that arise in our mind field. Whether, for example, when you read some religious scripture, from time to time, you can discover lots of military words like jihad or soldiers. So Buddha said all the practitioners are soldiers. Or in our one scripture, we have 6 Dharma stages: elementary faith, special faith. The next level is the battle between Mara and Dharma. Our founding master also used lots of military terms. Just as or you presented, if a spiritual practice is driving our car to a certain destination, let's say it's nirvana or complete liberation, sometimes it's smooth sailing, but sometimes on and off. We encounter obstacles. Fundamentally speaking, the obstacles are very much mental and internal. Those 4 obstacles, 4 roots of all hindrance, our founding master called that 4 articles to abandon, 4 articles to discard. Greed, disbelief, ignorance. What is the other thing? Anyway, 4 articles to discard. I heard from Douglas, who take care of our garden. We made kimchi for the past 2 days. The cabbage, the Chinese cabbage, were great. When he took care of the Chinese cabbage, he spread the manure, etc. If the cabbage is very fresh and strong, it is not that much affected by the insects. In order to make the cabbage of our practice very strong, that's the 4 articles to progress: faith, zeal, questioning mind, and the dedication. Let's say when we hike to the top of the Catskill Mountains, for the first 30, 40 minutes, it's fine. But as we become a little exhausted, particularly at that moment, we tend to encounter pretty steep incline. At your work, in human relationship, we tend to encounter some difficult situation, whether you're a practitioner or not, whether you're Christian or Muslim or Buddhist. At that exact moment, what are we supposed to do? Or how can we overcome those obstacles skillfully and successfully? When we drive our car, when we encounter steep area, what are we doing? We have to hit the gas pedal, accelerator, particularly at the moment. At the time, we have to invoke zeal or holy anger, or courage, passion, whatever you named that. We tend to be disappointed, frustrated, that's a human life. But at that point, we have to remind ourselves, we have to invoke, we have to master the courage or passion or zeal in our life. When we fall down, we need to get up again. So if a spiritual practice is a spiritual battle fighting with the enemies, even though all those soldiers, they don't fight 24/7. When the enemy appears or when they go to the battlefield, at that time, they fight. Sometimes they rest. Soldiers in Iraq or Afghanistan. Likewise, when we encounter difficult situation, let us reflect. Do we really have that kind of a passion or zeal or courage to get up again? Do you know why pit at the dog fighting? In many countries, it is illegal. What's the ideal breed of dog for dog fighting? Not the German Shepherd or Bulldog or Pit Bull. What's the dog's people? What's their characteristic? What is the bulldog's strength to make it a great fighting dog? Once they bite the opponent, it never let it go, even though they die. Winston Churchill said, do you know why the nose of the bulldog is slanted, not pointed? Do you know why? When the bulldog bites the opponent dog, if the nose is pointed, they cannot breathe. It's slanted. They bite the opponent dog and continue to breathe. It is born as a wonderful fighting dog. So this kind of a tenacity or audacity is required. Not 24/7, but when we encounter some difficult situation. The year I moved to the United States in the spring of 2000, 5 months later, I saw some scene on television. Twin Towers collapsed. I could not believe my eyes. It's just like some Western movie. It appeared to be just a Western movie. The next day, President appeared on the television. He addressed not just to the whole citizens of the United States, but to all the people of all the nations in the world. It's emergency. He said, are you with us? He would like to make other nations be very clear. Are you on our side or on the enemy's side? Are you with us or against us? It appeared to be a little political statement. But at that time, I thought to myself, in the spiritual warfare, it's a very, very proper, fitting word. Are you with us or against us? Are we on the light or in the darkness? Many times, whether they are Buddhist or Christians or Muslim, they say they are Sunday Christians. When you read the revelation from the Bible, it says, since you are lukewarm, since you are neither cold nor hot, I will spit you out of my mouth of salvation. Reflect your life, reflect your practice. Are you on the fence, or are you really inside of Yilwan's heart? So if we are on the fence, or if we are neither cold nor hot, we have to muster our courage or zeal to go inside our home. Think about that. Let's say all of us are living 3,000 years ago. So somebody like Franny caught a rabbit. I have to prepare, cook the rabbit. In order to make a fire, I have some wooden board and wooden stick. And I have to rub the wooden stick on top of the dry straw. I have to rub it very hard so that the straw can reach the ignition point. But if I just idly rub the wooden stick, will it become very hot? No. To a certain point, you have to rub it very, very hard so that it can be burning hot, so that the dry straw can catch fire. Is that the American saying? Hit iron when it is red. Is that the American saying? So let me quote Suzuki's writing. When you do something, you should burn yourself completely, like a good bonfire, leaving no trace of yourself. If you do not burn completely, a trace of yourself will be left in what you do. Zen activity is an activity which is completely burned out, with nothing remaining but ashes. So our practice is not a matter of 1 hour or 2 hours, or 1 day or 1 year. If you practice meditation with your whole body and mind, even for a moment, that is zazen or meditation. So moment after moment, you should devote yourself to your practice. Okay, I'd like to conclude saying one story. How can we invoke a greater passion or zeal in our life, in our practice? What could be the motivation? We can intellectually think, wow, I have to give rise to courage. But putting that in action is a different matter. Generally speaking, great zeal arises when we have a very, very difficult situation. Not difficult situation. I mean, very, very difficult situation. When we really hit the rock bottom, at the moment, we can be alert. Just like Ilwan Sang vow passage, from harm to grace, just like a lotus flower bloom in the muddy water. Do you know the teacher of Zen master Rinzai Imje? One of the 5 Zen school, Rinzai, Zen master Rinzai's teacher is Huang Biao. He was a Chinese emperor's mentor. When he was 20, he left home to become a Buddhist priest. But his mother was not happy with that. I think at the time, Buddhism was oppressed by the government, etc. And she cried too much. In older days, when you become a Buddhist monastic, you are not supposed to come home forever. She cried so much missing her son, and she became almost blind. She decided her mind one day when she grew old, before I die, I cannot see my son, but I would like to hold my son in my arm before I die. She established that wish. And she asked around, where's my son? She heard, your son is practicing in such and such monastery across the river. And she's almost blind and could not recognize her son. So she thought one thing, probably her son will not see her. So in order to meet her son, she started volunteering work, watching the people at the river bank who are taking the ferry. Then in order to go to the monastery, all the people should be on that ferry landing place. Her son has a big bump, kind of a wart on his left foot. So when she touched her son's left foot, she could recognize that. That's my son. She washed voluntarily people's foot free for several months. One day, her son recognized it was his mother, and he became very emotional. She first washed his right foot, and if he extend his left foot, his mother will not let him go. So when the older lady asked, would you give me the other foot? He extended his right foot one more time, so that his mother cannot recognize him. And he boarded that ferry. Minutes later, he heard from one village person, the young person that you just washed his foot is your son. She cried and jumped into the river and drowned to death. She died at the time. Later, monk Huangbe heard how her mother died. From that moment, he really mustered the courage and gave rise once again a great vow, a great passion, a great courage. So in his mid-30s, he attained great enlightenment. So just like when we cross over the ocean, we encounter small waves, big waves. Particularly when we encounter big waves, a very, very challenging situation. Let us give rise a great courage or zeal so that we can transform those adversities into grace or gratitude, from harm to grace. Thank you.
Thank you, Reverend Yu. So, Reverend Yu posed some good questions that you can discuss in your small group discussions. So I will open up the rooms now for you. Okay. Oops. Okay, welcome back, everybody. Hello, okay. So this time, I just want to ask all of you, today we're just going to use the chat room. All of you know where the chat room is. And I just want you to write down, it could be just a word or it could be a sentence, just a takeaway from today's either lecture or from your small group discussion. If you can just use our chat room and just enter that so that others can see it as well. Just take a moment. The takeaway, some golden nuggets or some questions, anything you want to share, or something that came out in the small group discussion that was inspiring or new to you. Just place it in the chat room today. Mm. Okay. Wow. Okay. Mm-hmm. So just take a moment to read your classmates' sharing. Yeah, there's really good points here. Mm. Yeah. Yeah, there's much. Yeah, I see some smiles and shaking of the heads. So. Mhm. Okay, great. So we'll keep those questions in mind. There's a lot, I think. So the meaning of words is highly cultural. You know, some one express, I grow so much each class. the variety of application. Zeal is what can propel you to act on your faith and is not necessarily a symptom of religious identity. I have learned or realized that the 4 articles are really interconnected. Is zeal only arise in adversity? The discussion was that it can be a motivating force in helping us in our practitioner's journey. I'll be reflecting on this week on Reverend Yu's question to us: how can we invoke a great passion or zeal in our practice? Balance in general, but when you have to face something extremely dangerous, you need zeal. I can become better and more perfect, complete through my struggles and trials. Zeal is what helps to get through the obstacles in life. We talked about not being attached to the outcome. Zeal is persistence, never giving up, but not with expectation. And very helpful to hear how others are showing zeal quite naturally in their daily lives. Thank you for sharing that, everybody. And Reverend Yu, would you just give a short closing?
Okay, wow, what you wrote was very good, very inspiring, yeah. Let's do this a couple of more times, even though we just have 3 classes left. Our third head Dharma master, Venerable Tesan, said, there are 2 bodhisattvas who always help practitioners. 2 bodhisattvas. One is the bodhisattva of favorable conditions, favorable situation. The other bodhisattva is the bodhisattva of adverse conditions. Just like plants grow not only in the spring and the summer, the root becomes stronger and conserve its energy during the winter time. Not just from the diversities, we give rise to a great zeal in whatever situation we need that. But what I emphasized was when we encounter our inner enemies, disbelief, greed, laziness, and ignorance, we have to fight with a great passion and the zeal. Sometimes, of course, we need to rest. These days, outer space started to be explored exponentially. Many scientists experiment how animals behave on the moon or in the no gravity zone, how plants grow if there is no gravity. One day, one scientist released 1,000 bees in non-gravity zones in the special closed space. The bees seemed very much surprised because the environment has been totally changed. They do not have to move their wing fast. They just hover around with the minimum movement of their wings. They were very, very happy. Just for a couple of days. After 1 week, the bees became very, very weak. And all those bees become dead after 2 weeks. If we only have favorable situation, our mind, our life, our practice will tend to become weakened and dead. The universe will not allow that. That's why it always gives us favorable and at the same time unfavorable situation. When a bone is broken, when it's connected and healed, do you know that part becomes more stronger, strengthened? When this is broken again, not in this part, the other part is broken. That part becomes better. In the spiritual warfare, there is no failure. As much as we fight, then our spirituality got enhanced. Our mind become empowered. So we can fall down, but as much as we can get up. How many times we can get up? Just as what's the push-up, just like the push-up, then we can strengthen our body, strengthen our muscle, our mind as well, the spirituality will be enhanced. So let's welcome all those diversities with a great zeal. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Reverend Yu. And I'm just going to end with a slide for Buddhist humor, because all of you are Buddhist. Okay, so that's our Buddhist humor for today. Can you all see that? Okay, so everyone have a very good night. Bye.